In the vast wilderness of the Montana Territory, 1876, where the rolling plains meet the towering mountains, lived a girl whose voice had been stolen by tragedy. Willow Reed, born to the Blackfoot tribe, carried a secret that would one day bring worlds together. But first she had to survive being unwanted by the very people who should have protected her. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This is a story of resilience, of finding light in the darkest corners of existence, and how sometimes the most profound connections are formed when we step beyond the boundaries that divide us. The morning frost crunched beneath Willow's bare feet as she moved silently through the tribal encampment. At 15, she was tall for her age, with deep amber eyes that observed everything but revealed nothing. Her long black hair hung loose today, partially obscuring the scar that ran from her left ear down to her collarbone, a permanent reminder of the night she lost everything, including her voice. As she collected firewood for the communal cooking fire, she felt the familiar stares of the other tribe members. Some looked at her with pity, others with suspicion, but most with a distant unease. Willow had not spoken a single word in 7 years, not since the night raiders attacked their previous encampment. She had watched her parents fall, had felt the burning slice of a blade across her throat, and had been left for dead among the ashes. When she was found the next morning by returning hunters, the tribe's medicine man, Grey Wolf, had managed to save her life, but not her voice. "The spirits have marked this one," the elders whispered. "She walks with death, but does not join it. She brings bad fortune." Chief Running Elk had taken her in out of duty to her father, who had been his cousin, but even he kept his distance. His wife, Mourning Dove, made no secret of her belief that Willow's presence brought ill fortune to their family. "Look how the game grows," she would say within Willow's hearing. "Look how the winter grows. Her silence speaks to darker powers." Only Grey Wolf treated her with kindness, teaching her to read signs in nature and to use plants for healing. In his aging eyes, Willow found no fear, only patience. But even his protection could not shield her from the daily wounds of being unwanted. This morning, like every morning, Willow completed her chores with methodical precision. She tended the fire, carried water from the stream, helped prepare the morning meal, all without acknowledgement. The children were forbidden to play with her, and the young men and women her age turned away when she approached. As the sun climbed higher, Willow finished her tasks and slipped away from the encampment. This was her true routine, to complete her obligations quickly so she could escape to the one place where she felt peace, a small clearing by the river, hidden by a thicket of willows and cottonwoods, where she could be alone with her thoughts. Here, surrounded by nature's indifference to her silence, Willow found solace. She removed a small bundle from the hollow of an old tree, her secret treasure. Unwrapping the deerskin, she revealed several pieces of charcoal and flattened birch bark. With practiced hands, she began to draw. This was her voice now, the images flowing from her fingertips. She drew the mountains in the distance, the eagles soaring overhead, the deer drinking at the river's edge. But today she drew something new, a face that had appeared in her dreams for 3 nights now. A woman with pale skin and eyes the color of the summer sky, wearing strange clothing and with hair like spun gold. Willow didn't understand why this woman had come to her in dreams, but she had learned to trust the visions that sometimes visited her. Grey Wolf said she had the gift of sight, though she kept this ability hidden from the others, who would only fear her more. As she finished her drawing, a twig snapped behind her. Willow whirled around, clutching her treasures to her chest. "There you are." It was Morning Star, Chief Running Elk's daughter, and Willow's cousin by blood, if not by bond. "Mother is looking for you." The trading party from the settlement will arrive today, and there is much to prepare. Morning Star, beautiful and proud, never missed an opportunity to remind Willow of her place. You should not wander off alone. People talk. They say your mind is as broken as your voice. Willow stared back, expressionless, having long ago learned that showing hurt only invited more cruelty. Morning Star's eyes fell to the drawing in Willow's hands. "What is that? Give it to me." Before Willow could hide it away, Morning Star snatched the birch bark and examined the drawing of the pale woman. "Why are you drawing one of the white settlers?" Her voice hardened. "Have you been sneaking to their town again? Father has forbidden it. They bring nothing but disease and misfortune." Willow shook her head, reaching for her drawing, but Morning Star held it away. "I should show this to my father. Perhaps then he will finally send you away to the missionaries. They take broken things like you." Panic rose in Willow's chest. The missionaries who had established a school near the white settlement were known for their harshness, especially toward those who clung to tribal ways. Children sent there rarely returned, and those who did were shadows of themselves, stripped of their language and customs. As Morning Star turned to leave, Willow lunged forward, grabbing for the drawing. In the struggle that followed, the fragile birch bark tore. Morning Star pushed Willow away with such force that she stumbled backward and fell into the shallow edge of the river. "Look what you made me do," Morning Star exclaimed, holding the torn pieces. "You truly are cursed." She threw the pieces into the flowing water before stalking away, leaving Willow half-submerged, watching her artwork dissolve and float downstream. With heavy movements, Willow pulled herself from the water. Her dress, her only one, was soaked and muddy. Her small collection of charcoal had been scattered in the struggle, much of it lost in the river. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. Instead, she gathered what remained of her supplies and carefully rewrapped them in the deerskin. She would dry her dress as best she could before returning to camp. To arrive wet and dirty would only confirm what everyone already believed, that she was wild, untamed, unsuitable. As she spread her dress in a sunny patch to dry, wearing only her simple undergarment, Willow closed her eyes and tried to recapture the woman's face from her dream. There had been kindness in those eyes, a kindness that seemed to promise something Willow had nearly forgotten existed: hope. Meanwhile, 15 miles away in the growing settlement of Riverstone, Rebecca Montgomery loaded supplies into her wagon. At 32, Rebecca was considered a spinster by most, though her striking blue eyes and golden hair still turned heads. She had come west 3 years earlier after the death of her fiancé in the war, seeking purpose in a new beginning. "You sure you don't want one of the men to ride with you, Miss Montgomery?" asked Thomas, the shopkeeper, as he handed her the last of her purchases. "The road can be dangerous for a woman alone." Rebecca smiled patiently. She had heard such concerns since the day she arrived and established her small homestead outside of town. "I appreciate your concern, Thomas, but I've made this trip 100 times. The Blackfoot have kept to the treaty bounds since General Howard negotiated the new terms. Besides, I'm not defenseless." She patted the rifle secured to the side of her wagon. "It's not just Indians that worry me," Thomas said, lowering his voice. "There's been talk of deserters from the fort causing trouble, and that new mining camp up north has brought in some rough types." "All the more reason I should get on the road while there's plenty of daylight left," Rebecca replied, climbing onto the wagon seat and taking the reins. "I'll be fine, Thomas, I always am." The truth was, Rebecca welcomed these solitary journeys. The wide open spaces of Montana Territory spoke to something deep within her soul that had never been satisfied by the confines of Boston society. Out here, She was defined not by her unmarried status or her family connections, but by her own capabilities. Her homestead, modest but thriving, had become a source of quiet pride. The small cabin she had built with her own hands, and occasional help from neighbors, the vegetable garden that produced more than she could eat, the chickens and 2 milk cows that provided eggs and dairy, all testified to her determination. But it was her work as a teacher that gave her life meaning. 3 days a week, she taught the settlement's children in a one-room schoolhouse they had raised last summer. The remaining days, she spent creating teaching materials, tending her homestead, and making these supply runs. As she guided the wagon along the rutted road that led away from Riverstone, Rebecca's thoughts turned to the upcoming Blackfoot trading day. Twice a year, members of the local tribe came to a neutral meeting ground to trade with the settlers. It was a tenuous peace, built on mutual need rather than trust, but it was peace nonetheless. Rebecca had developed a particular interest in the indigenous people, learning what she could of their language and customs, despite the disapproval of many of her fellow settlers. Her small collection of native craftwork, beaded moccasins, woven baskets, and a particularly beautiful quilled leather pouch were among her most treasured possessions, not as curiosities, but as expressions of a rich culture she wished to understand. Perhaps there will be new faces this time, she mused aloud to her horse Maple, who flicked an ear back at the sound of her voice. The trading days had become somewhat predictable in who attended and what was offered. Rebecca always brought extra fabric, needles and thread, knowing these were particularly valued items. As the wagon crested a small rise, Rebecca caught sight of the river that gave Riverstone its name, winding like a silver ribbon through the valley below. Something caught her eye, a flash of movement along the bank where the river curved around a stand of cottonwoods. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Curious, Rebecca slowed the wagon. It wasn't unusual to see wildlife at this hour, deer, coming to drink, or perhaps even elk. But as she watched, she realized it was a human figure, small and slight, moving with unusual grace among the trees. A child, perhaps. But no settler children would be this far from town alone. An indigenous child, then, though they rarely ventured this close to the settlement paths without adults. Rebecca hesitated. The trading day rules were clear: contact outside of designated times and places was discouraged by both sides, and yet something about the solitary figure tugged at her. Was the child lost? In trouble? Making her decision, Rebecca guided the wagon off the main path and toward the river. She would simply ensure all was well, then continue on her way. As she approached, the figure disappeared into the thick underbrush. Rebecca brought the wagon to a stop and climbed down, securing Maple's reins to a nearby branch. "Hello?" she called softly, not wanting to frighten whoever was there. "I mean no harm. Are you all right?" Silence greeted her, but Rebecca sensed she was being watched. Moving slowly, she approached the riverbank. The ground here was soft, and clear footprints were visible in the mud, small, barefoot impressions that confirmed her suspicion that it was indeed a child she had seen. Following the tracks, Rebecca pushed through a curtain of willow branches and found herself in a small clearing. At first it appeared empty, but then she spotted what looked like fabric spread on a sun-warmed rock to dry. Beside it, partially hidden under a fallen log, was a small deerskin bundle. Rebecca approached carefully and knelt to examine the scene. The fabric was a simple dress, made in the Blackfoot style, damp as if recently washed or fallen into the water. The bundle, when she gently touched it, contained pieces of charcoal and several scraps of birch bark. Curious, she opened the bundle further and gasped softly at what she found. The birch bark pieces held drawings, Not the simple stick figures one might expect from a child, but detailed, skillful renderings of landscapes, animals, and plants. Each stroke conveyed movement and life with an artistry that would be remarkable in any setting, let alone on such crude materials. "These are extraordinary," she whispered, carefully examining each piece. A sudden movement to her right made Rebecca look up. There, half hidden behind a large cottonwood, stood a young Indigenous girl. She was thin, dressed only in a simple undergarment, her long black hair falling around a face that held both wariness and defiance. What immediately caught Rebecca's attention, however, was the jagged scar that ran from the girl's ear down her neck, disappearing beneath her garment. "Hello," Rebecca said gently, setting down the drawings exactly as she had found them. "Are these yours? They're beautiful." The girl made no response, her dark eyes wary. "My name is Rebecca Montgomery. I live near here." She pointed in the general direction of her homestead. "Do you understand English?" Still no response, but the girl's gaze flicked to the drawings and back to Rebecca's face. "I'm sorry for disturbing you," Rebecca continued, taking a step back to give the girl space. "I saw someone from the road and wanted to make sure everything was all right." The girl hesitated, then pointed to the dress drying on the rock. "Ah, your dress got wet. Is that why you're waiting here?" Rebecca nodded in understanding. "It will dry faster if you spread it out more fully." She gestured to show what she meant. "Be careful not to touch the garment without permission." To her surprise, the girl emerged from her hiding place and approached the rock. She adjusted the dress as Rebecca had suggested, her movements quick and efficient. At closer range, Rebecca could see that the girl was older than she had first appeared, a teenager, not a child, though painfully thin. "Are you from the Blackfoot? In camp to the north?" Rebecca asked, pointing in that direction. The girl nodded once, her expression still guarded. "Will someone be looking for you?" A slight shrug, followed by a gesture that Rebecca interpreted as "eventually." "You don't speak?" Rebecca asked gently. The girl touched her scarred throat and shook her head. "I see," Rebecca said softly, her heart filling with compassion. "But you clearly have much to say." She gestured to the drawings. "These show great talent." Something flickered in the girl's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or the faintest glimmer of hope. It was gone so quickly that Rebecca might have imagined it, but she was certain she had not. Slowly, as if making a momentous decision, the girl reached for a piece of charcoal and a fresh piece of birch bark. With swift, sure strokes, she began to draw. Rebecca watched in amazement as an image emerged, a perfect rendering of Rebecca herself, capturing not just her features, but somehow the very essence of her curiosity and compassion. When the girl finished, she hesitantly offered the drawing to Rebecca. "For me?" Rebecca asked, deeply moved by the gesture. "Thank you. It's wonderful." As she accepted the gift, their fingers brushed, and for the briefest moment, the girl's guarded expression softened. In that instant, Rebecca felt a connection form between them, fragile as a spider's web, but surprisingly strong. "You have a remarkable gift," Rebecca said. "I've never seen anything like it." The girl looked down, seeming almost embarrassed by the praise, then glanced anxiously at the position of the sun. "You need to get back before you're missed," Rebecca guessed. The girl nodded, checking her dress, which was now mostly dry in the warm afternoon sun. "May I know your name?" Rebecca asked. "Can you show me?" After a moment's consideration, the girl took another piece of bark and drew with quick strokes, not writing, but a simple image of a willow tree by water. "Willow," Rebecca guessed. The girl nodded, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "It suits you," Rebecca said with a smile. "Willows bend but don't break. They're much stronger than they appear." As Willow slipped her dress back on over her head, Rebecca had an impulsive thought. "Willow, the trading day is tomorrow. Will you be there?" Another nod, though less certain. "I'll be there too. I always bring fabrics and sewing supplies to trade. An idea was forming in Rebecca's mind. And paper, real drawing paper, and perhaps some proper charcoal sticks or even pencils. Would you like that? The change in Willow's expression was subtle but profound, like the first ray of sun breaking through after a long storm. She gave another nod, this one eager, before gathering her things with quick efficiency. "Until tomorrow, then," Rebecca said, stepping back to give the girl space to leave. Willow hesitated, looking at Rebecca with an intensity that seemed to communicate volumes without a single word. Then, clutching her precious bundle to her chest, she melted back into the forest with the silent grace of a deer. Rebecca stood for a long moment, looking at the drawing in her hand. Something about this encounter felt significant, as if the random chance that had led her to stop here had been not so random after all. As she made her way back to her wagon, Rebecca's mind was already churning with possibilities. How could a girl with such extraordinary talent be developed? What circumstances had led to her injury and apparent isolation? And most importantly, how could Rebecca help her without overstepping the careful boundaries that maintained the fragile peace between settlers and the Blackfoot? She didn't have answers yet, but as she continued her journey home, Rebecca felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had experienced since coming west. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Dawn broke crisp and clear over the Montana Territory. In the Blackfoot encampment, preparations for the trading day had begun before first light. Men packed furs, women wrapped beadwork and quilled garments in protective cloths, and children buzzed with excitement at the rare opportunity to see the settler town. In her small lodge at the edge of camp, Willow finished her morning tasks with unusual haste. Typically, she dreaded these trading expeditions, the stares from settlers, the whispered comments from her own people, warning against letting her strange presence offend the whites. But today, for the first time in years, she felt a flutter of anticipation. She had chosen her single dress carefully, washing it again in the stream and mending a small tear with meticulous stitches. From a hidden pouch, she retrieved a blue bead she had found months ago, tying it into her hair as a small adornment. Grey Wolf noticed her unusual care as he passed by. The aging medicine man paused, his weathered face creasing into a rare smile. "You seem different today, little Willow," he said, his voice gentle. He was the only one who still used her childhood name. "The spirits have whispered something to you, perhaps?" Willow glanced around to ensure they weren't observed, then pulled from her sleeve the small piece of birch bark bearing the drawing she had made of Rebecca, the woman she had met yesterday, the woman from her dreams. Grey Wolf examined it carefully, his eyes widening slightly. "Have you seen this woman before meeting her?" Willow nodded, pointing to her temple to indicate dreams. "And now you have met her in the waking world." It wasn't a question. Grey Wolf returned the drawing with reverence. "Your gift grows stronger. Remember what I have taught you. Visions come for a purpose. They are neither good nor evil, but how we respond to them shapes their meaning." From across the camp, Morning Star's sharp voice cut through their quiet exchange. "Father says to hurry. We leave for the trading ground within the hour." Grey Wolf touched Willow's shoulder, a gesture of protection and blessing. "Be watchful. Today, little Willow. Change approaches on swift wings." As the Blackfoot trading party departed, 20 adults and a handful of older children deemed responsible enough to attend, Willow found herself positioned at the very rear of the procession. Chief Running Elk led the way, his features stern with the responsibility of maintaining both dignity and safety for his people. His wife, Morning Dove, walked several paces behind, with Morning Star at her side. The rest followed according to rank and relationship. Willow didn't mind her place at the end. It allowed her to move at her own pace, to observe without being observed. She carried a small bundle containing the few items she had to trade, 3 pairs of moccasins she had sewn during the winter months, each decorated with simple but elegant beadwork in patterns Grey Wolf had taught her were sacred to healing. Trading ground lay in a meadow halfway between the Blackfoot encampment and Riverstone settlement, neutral territory by long agreement. As they approached, Willow could see that many settlers had already arrived, their wagons forming a loose semicircle on the far side of the clearing. Tables had been set up displaying goods, bolts of fabric, metal tools, bags of sugar and coffee, jars of preserved foods, and other manufactured items unavailable to the tribe. Chief Running Elk raised his hand, halting the procession before they entered the meadow. He turned to address them, his voice solemn. "Remember our ways, trade fairly, speak little, watch always. We come for what we need, not what we desire. We leave when the sun touches the top of the tall pine." He pointed to a distinctive tree, at the edge of the clearing. "No one remains behind, no one wanders from sight." His gaze lingered on Willow for a moment longer than necessary, a clear warning. She lowered her eyes in acknowledgement. As they moved into the clearing, Willow scanned the settler side, searching for a glimpse of golden hair. The trading ground quickly filled with activity, items displayed, examined, offers made with words or gestures, goods changing hands. Unlike the loud haggling of settler markets, the indigenous trading tradition maintained a dignified reserve, with value understood through generations of established practice rather than aggressive negotiation. Willow set her small offering on a flat rock at the edge of the activity, as she had in previous years. Few settlers sought out her simple moccasins when more elaborate pieces were available from more esteemed tribal members. She used the time to observe, to learn, to watch for the woman from her visions. Nearly an hour passed before Willow spotted her. Rebecca Montgomery arrived in a small wagon, dressed in a practical blue skirt and white blouse, her golden hair braided and pinned up beneath a modest bonnet. She moved with purpose, greeting indigenous traders and fellow settlers with equal warmth. Unlike many of the settlers who approached the trading with barely disguised suspicion or condescension, Rebecca showed genuine respect, waiting her turn, examining offered items with admiration rather than the calculating eye of someone looking for a bargain, speaking in the few Blackfoot phrases she knew when appropriate. Willow watched as Rebecca set up her trading goods on a small table, fabric, in colors Willow had never seen, gleaming needles and spools of thread, small jars of what appeared to be jam or honey. But at the corner of her table sat something that made Willow's heart quicken, a stack of cream-colored paper and several wrapped packages that could only be drawing implements. Rebecca seemed to be searching the trading ground even as she conducted her business, her blue eyes scanning the assembled tribal members. Looking for someone, looking for her. Willow hesitated. To approach directly would draw attention. Morning Star and Morning Dove were already watching her with suspicion from their position near the chief's trading display. Yet something stronger than caution propelled her forward, weaving through the crowd until she stood at the edge of Rebecca's table. For a moment, Rebecca didn't notice her, engaged in trading fabric for a beautifully woven basket. When she turned and saw Willow, her face transformed with genuine pleasure. "Willow, you came." Her voice was warm, pitched low enough not to draw attention. "I was looking for you." Willow nodded, glancing quickly around to see if anyone had noticed their familiarity. Rebecca followed her gaze, understanding immediately. "Perhaps we should appear to be trading." She gestured to the moccasins Willow carried. "Are these your work? They're beautiful." Willow placed them on the table, watching as Rebecca examined them with genuine appreciation. "The stitching is exquisite," she said, "and these patterns, they have meaning, don't they?" Willow nodded, surprised and touched by Rebecca's understanding. "I'd like to trade for them." Rebecca gestured to her goods. Please choose whatever. Seems fair. Without hesitation, Willow pointed to the paper and drawing supplies. Rebecca smiled. I hoped you might want these. She wrapped the items carefully in a piece of oilcloth to protect them from the elements. There's charcoal, graphite pencils, and even a few colored chalks. And the paper, it's from Boston, much better than birch bark, though your work on that humble material was remarkable. As she handed the package to Willow, Rebecca leaned forward slightly. There's something else, a book of drawings and paintings, artists from Europe and America. I thought perhaps you might like to see what others have done with similar gifts to yours. Willow's eyes widened. A book? Such treasures were rare, even among the settlers, and certainly beyond anything she had ever hoped to possess. It's not for trade. Rebecca continued quickly. It's a gift, but I couldn't bring it today. Too many questions. I thought perhaps... A shadow fell across the table, interrupting her. Mourning Dove stood beside them, her face a rigid mask of disapproval. You have completed your trade, she said to Willow in their native tongue. Return to your place. Rebecca straightened, addressing Mourning Dove with careful respect. Good day to you. I was just admiring the excellent craftsmanship of these moccasins. Mourning Dove's expression didn't soften. You speak to one who cannot answer. It is a waste of breath. Though Rebecca couldn't understand the words, the tone was unmistakable. I find we understand each other quite well, she replied evenly. Morning. Dove switched to halting English. This girl, not right in head, bad medicine. Willow flinched at the deliberate cruelty, clutching her newly acquired treasures to her chest. Rebecca's expression remained composed, though a flash of anger appeared briefly in her eyes. I disagree. I find her quite remarkable. Before morning, Dove could respond. A commotion erupted at the far end of the trading ground. Raised voices, male, angry, broke the orderly hum of activity. Chief Running Elk moved swiftly toward the disturbance, his bearing regal even in haste. 3 men on horseback had ridden into the clearing, settlers, but not from Riverstone. Their dusty clothing and unshaven faces marked them as prospectors, or drifters, the kind that followed mining operations from camp to camp. The leader, a burly man with a scarred face, was red-faced and shouting. They stole our horses. 3 days ago at Wolf Creek Crossing. He pointed accusingly at the assembled Blackfoot traders. 4 braves with war paint. They killed Morgan and took everything. Murmurs rippled through both groups. Wolf Creek was known territory of a rival tribe, not the Blackfoot. Chief Running Elk raised his hand for silence. My people have not left our hunting grounds. We have kept the peace treaty. Indians are all the same, the man spat. Thieving savages. We tracked them north, right toward your camp. Several Blackfoot men stepped forward, hands moving to weapons. Settler families began hastily packing their goods, casting fearful glances at their indigenous trading partners moments before. Rebecca moved from behind her table, positioning herself between Willow and the growing tension. Mr. Harkins, she called to a grey-haired settler who seemed to hold some authority. Perhaps we should verify these claims before accusations are made. Sheriff Miller should be informed. The man named Harkins nodded, approaching the mounted men. Fletcher, you and your boys need to take this to proper authorities. This is a peaceful trading day protected by agreement with the Army and the Territorial. Governor, Fletcher, the leader, spat on the ground. By the time your sheriff and the Army decide to do something, they'll be long gone. We aim to get justice now. His hand moved to the rifle in his saddle holster, triggering an immediate response. The Blackfoot warriors raised their weapons. Settler men positioned themselves before their families. In the moment before violence erupted, an unexpected voice cut through the tension. These men lie. All eyes turned to Grey Wolf, who had stepped into the center of the clearing. Despite his age, he stood tall, his voice carrying surprising strength. 3 days ago, as they claim, Our scouts reported riders matching their description, attacking a crow hunting party near Wolf Creek. The crow fought back. One rider was wounded, his knowing eyes fixed on Fletcher. One with a fresh bullet wound in his left shoulder. Fletcher's face drained of color, his right hand instinctively moving to his left shoulder. Grey Wolf continued relentlessly. The Crow lodged a complaint with the army at Fort Ellis. Ask Captain James Reeves if you doubt my words. These men are not victims. They are the raiders. For a heartbeat, the clearing held its breath. Then Fletcher yanked his horse around. Let's go, boys. No point arguing with Indian lovers and their pet savages. They galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust and tension behind them. Slowly, weapons lowered, but the easy atmosphere of the trading day had been shattered. Chief Running Elk conferred briefly with Grey Wolf, then announced, "We have traded enough." And for today, the Blackfoot began gathering their remaining goods with efficient movements. Rebecca turned to Willow, concern etched on her face. "Will you be safe? Those men—" Willow nodded, surprising herself by reaching out to briefly touch Rebecca's, and a gesture of reassurance and gratitude. "I still have something for you," Rebecca said quietly. "The book. My homestead lies a mile east of here, just beyond Yellow Bluff. A small cabin with a red door. If you could ever—" She hesitated, aware of the impossibility of what she was suggesting. Willow, venturing alone to a settler's home, would violate every tribal rule, not to mention place her in danger from people like Fletcher. Willow gave no response, already turning to join the departing tribal members. But as she walked away, she carefully tucked Rebecca's words into her memory like a precious stone. That night, as the Blackfoot camp settled into uneasy sleep, rumors and tension lingered from the aborted trading day. The encounter with Fletcher and his men had deepened many tribal members' distrust of the settlers. Even Chief Running Elk, usually a voice of measured reason, spoke of restricting future contact. Inside her small lodge, behind the privacy of hanging hides, Willow unwrapped her treasures from Rebecca. The paper felt impossibly smooth beneath her fingertips. The charcoal sticks were uniform and precise, unlike the uneven pieces she gathered from fire pits. And the pencils, these were true magic, making marks that didn't smudge at her touch. By the faint light of a small tallow candle, Willow began to draw. Not landscapes or animals this time, but faces, her people, captured in moments of unguarded emotion. Grey Wolf in contemplation, a young mother gazing at her child. The lines flowed from her fingers with newfound precision, each image more alive than the last. When she finally slept, her dreams were vivid and strange. A great bird carrying her above the mountains, a cabin with a red door standing alone on a grassy hill, and Rebecca holding out her hands, filled with colored light. Dawn was still hours away when Willow woke. The camp lay silent under a blanket of stars. Without conscious decision, she gathered her few precious possessions, the drawing materials, a spare garment, a small knife Grey Wolf had given her, and a pouch of dried berries. She moved through the sleeping camp like a ghost, leaving no trace of her passage. At the edge of the encampment, she paused, looking back at the only home she had ever known. Despite the years of isolation and rejection, leaving brought a sharp pang of grief. This was her people, her history, her blood. Yet she knew with bone-deep certainty that her future lay elsewhere. Grey Wolf's lodge stood slightly apart from the others. As if expecting her, the old medicine man sat outside, wrapped in a blanket against the night chill. "So, little Willow, you have chosen your path." His voice held no surprise, only a gentle sadness. Willow knelt before him, bowing, her head in respect and question. "Yes, I have seen this moment approaching," Grey Wolf said, answering her unspoken query. "The spirits show me many possible paths, but each person must walk their own." He reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden pendant on a leather cord. "This belonged to your mother. She left it in my keeping the night before the raid, saying she had dreamed of darkness coming. I have waited for the right time to return it to you." With gnarled fingers, he placed it around Willow's neck. The pendant was warm against her skin, as if it carried some essence of the mother she barely remembered. "It will help guide your way," Grey Wolf continued. "But remember, little Willow, even a tree transplanted must remember its roots to grow strong. Your gift comes from your people, even those who could not see its value." Willow touched her throat, then her heart, a gesture, asking if she would ever return. Grey Wolf's eyes grew distant. "The future is a river with many branches. I see you returning but changed, and bringing change with you." His focus sharpened on her face. "You go to the settler woman." Willow nodded. "She has a good heart. But the path between our worlds is narrow and treacherous. Be cautious, little Willow. Not all who smile wish you well." He reached out, touching her forehead in blessing. "Go now, before others wake. May the ancestors guide your steps." With a full heart, Willow rose and slipped into the pre-dawn darkness. The eastern horizon was just beginning to lighten as she set her course, guided by the rising sun and the pull of an inexplicable connection that felt both terrifying and right. A mile east of the trading ground, beyond Yellow Bluff, a small cabin with a red door. A new beginning. The sun was just breaking over the eastern hills when Willow approached Yellow Bluff. She had traveled through the remaining darkness with caution, avoiding the main paths where early rising settlers might spot her. The wooden, pendant Grey Wolf had given her felt warm against her skin, a small comfort in her solitary journey. From the top of the bluff, she could see several homesteads scattered across the valley below. Most were simple structures, log cabins with small outbuildings and fenced areas for livestock. Thin columns of smoke rose from chimneys as households began their day. Willow's eyes scanned the landscape, searching for the landmark Rebecca had mentioned. There, set apart from the others on a gentle rise, stood a modest cabin with a splash of color she could distinguish even at this distance. A red door, bright as sumac berries in autumn. Anxiety tightened her chest. What if Rebecca had merely been kind in the moment? What if she regretted her invitation? What if others were there? Willow had never ventured alone to a settler dwelling. Stories circulated in the tribe of indigenous people who disappeared after approaching white settlements unaccompanied. Yet something stronger than fear propelled her forward. Not just the hope of sanctuary, but a deep, inexplicable certainty that her path led to that red door. Willow made her way down the bluff, keeping to the cover of trees and tall grasses. As she drew closer to Rebecca's homestead, details emerged: a well-tended vegetable garden, chickens scratching in a small yard, a milk cow grazing in a fenced pasture. Unlike many settler properties that seemed to wage war against the natural landscape, this one appeared to work in harmony with it. She paused at the edge of the clearing, gathering courage. The morning was advanced enough now that Rebecca would surely be awake, but no movement was visible. Just as Willow wondered if she should retreat and return later, the red door opened. Rebecca emerged, carrying a basket. Her golden hair was loose, around her shoulders, catching the early sunlight. She wore a simple dress with an apron, looking relaxed and at ease in her solitude. As she crossed to the chicken coop, collecting eggs with practiced movements, Willow noticed how she hummed a quiet tune to herself. There was something profoundly peaceful about the scene. A woman, content in her own company, moving through her daily tasks with purpose and care. It stirred an unfamiliar longing in Willow's heart. Gathering her resolve, Willow stepped from the shadow of the trees. She made no sound, but some sixth sense caused Rebecca to look up. For a moment, surprise registered on her face, followed swiftly by genuine delight. Willow! Rebecca set down her basket and moved toward her. You came! She stopped a respectful distance away, seeming to understand Willow's wariness. Please, you're welcome here. Are you hungry? Would you like some breakfast? The mention of food made Willow suddenly aware of her hunger. She had left without eating, and the journey, though not long in distance, had been taxing in its unfamiliarity. Rebecca gestured toward the cabin. Please come inside, you're safe here. The interior of the cabin was unlike anything Willow had ever seen. While tribal lodges were functional and spare, this space held an unexpected beauty in its simplicity. A table and chairs crafted from polished wood, a bed with a colorful quilt, shelves lined with books, more books than Willow had imagined existed. A cast-iron stove provided warmth, and windows let in streams of morning light. Most surprising were the drawings and paintings that adorned the walls, landscapes, portraits, and scenes of daily life, all rendered with skill and feeling. Rebecca noticed her interest. Do you like them? Some are my own attempts, though I'm merely an amateur. Others I brought from Boston or traded for from traveling artists. She busied herself at the stove, speaking in a gentle conversational tone, as if having a silent, indigenous girl in her home was the most natural thing in the world. I hope you like eggs and biscuits. The honey is from my own hives, just 2. But they produce well. Please sit wherever you'd like. Willow perched uncertainly on the edge of a chair, her small bundle of possessions clutched in her lap. May I ask? Rebecca turned, a concerned furrow appearing between her brows as she took Willow's travel bundle. Have you left your people? Willow nodded, her expression a complex mixture of grief, determination, and uncertainty. Oh, Willow. Rebecca's voice softened with understanding. That must have been a difficult choice. Another nod, more hesitant. And, you came here. The question held no judgment, only gentle surprise. Willow lifted her chin, meeting Rebecca's gaze directly. She gestured to the drawing supplies visible in her bundle, then to the artwork on the walls. The message was clear. She had come because of a shared understanding, a connection through art that transcended the barriers between them. Rebecca's eyes brightened with emotion. I'm honored by your trust. She returned to preparing their meal, giving Willow time to absorb her new surroundings. You're welcome to stay as long as you wish. I have a small room, really just an alcove, where I store supplies. We could make it comfortable for you. The offer was so freely given, so without expectation of return, that Willow felt momentarily overwhelmed. In the tribal community, everything existed in careful balance. Gifts required reciprocation, support demanded loyalty, belonging required conformity. This unconditional welcome was as foreign to her as the cabin itself. As if sensing her discomfort, Rebecca changed the subject. I promised you a book, didn't I? She moved to a bookshelf and selected a large volume bound in green leather. This belonged to my father. He collected works from artists across Europe and America. She placed it on the table before Willow with reverent care. It's one of my most treasured possessions. The book opened to reveal page after page of illustrations and paintings, each protected by a thin sheet of translucent paper. Landscapes of places Willow had never imagined, people in strange clothing, animals are both familiar and fantastical. Each image was accompanied by text she couldn't read, but the visual language spoke directly to her soul. Rebecca placed a plate of food beside the book. Please, eat while you look. Art feeds the spirit, but the body needs sustenance too. The meal was simple but delicious. Flavors both familiar and new. As Willow ate, Rebecca sat across from her, respecting her silence but maintaining a gentle conversation. I came west 3 years ago, after losing someone dear to me. Many thought I was foolish, a woman alone pursuing an uncertain future. But I found freedom here that Boston society could never offer. She gestured to the surrounding land visible through the windows. room to breathe, room to become who I was meant to be. She sipped her tea thoughtfully. I imagine we have that in common, seeking a place where we can be truly seen. The perceptiveness of this observation made Willow look up sharply. Rebecca smiled, a hint of sadness touching her eyes. I noticed how they treat you, your own people. The woman at the trading ground, she was cruel without need. Willow's hand moved unconsciously to her scarred throat. May I ask what happened? You don't have to tell me, Rebecca added quickly, but sometimes sharing a burden lightens it. For a moment, Willow considered how to respond. Then she turned to a blank page in the book and pointed to Rebecca's charcoal sticks on a nearby shelf. At Rebecca's nod, she began to draw. Swift, sure strokes created a scene of violence, a tribal encampment in flames, mounted figures wielding weapons, bodies fallen. In one corner, a small girl huddled beside two still forms, blood streaming from her neck. The image was stark in its emotion, yet rendered with such skill that it conveyed not just the events, but the terror, the loss, the severing of voice and security in a single night of violence. When she finished, Willow sat back, her eyes distant with memory. Rebecca studied the drawing, her face solemn with shared grief. You were so young, she said softly, and you lost everything. Your parents, your voice, your sense of safety. She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of Willow's, offering connection without demanding it. Thank you for trusting me with your story. After a moment's hesitation, Willow placed her hand in Rebecca's. The contact was brief, but meaningful, acknowledgement of a bridge being built between their separate worlds. As the morning progressed, they established a surprising harmony. Rebecca showed Willow around the homestead, the garden where she grew vegetables and herbs, the beehives positioned to catch the southern sun, the small workshop where she prepared teaching materials for her students. Throughout it all, she explained what she was doing in simple terms, never treating Willow's silence as a barrier to understanding. By midday, they had settled into a comfortable rhythm. While Rebecca worked on household tasks, Willow explored the bookshelf, paging through volumes filled with wonders she had never imagined. When she discovered a book about plants and their medicinal properties, her interest was so evident that Rebecca moved it to a special place on the table. You know about healing plants, don't you? Rebecca observed. Perhaps you could show me sometime. My knowledge is limited to what I've learned from books and a few local women. The afternoon brought a new development. Rebecca cleared the table and brought out papers covered in strange marks, student essays she needed to grade before the next school day. As she worked, she occasionally glanced at Willow, who was absorbed in drawing the view from the cabin window. Willow, she said suddenly, setting down her pen, would you like to learn to read and write? The question startled Willow from her artistic focus. She tilted her head questioningly. I'm a teacher, Rebecca explained. I could teach you if you wanted. Not to replace your own ways of communicating. Your art speaks volumes, but to add another tool. The offer hung in the air between them, its implications vast. Learning the settlers' written language was something few Indigenous people had the opportunity to do, a potential bridge, but also a step away from tribal traditions. After a long moment of consideration, Willow nodded, her expression solemn. With the weight of the decision, we can start tomorrow, Rebecca said, her voice warm with approval. For now, would you like to help me prepare dinner? I thought we might make bread together. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, a sound broke their domestic tranquility, the distant approach of a horse and wagon. Rebecca moved quickly to the window, her body tensing as she peered out. It's Thomas from the general store, she said, concern edging her voice. And he's not alone. Sheriff Miller is with him. She turned to Willow, who had shrunk back toward the shadows of the room. It's all right. They're not dangerous men, But your presence here might raise questions. Willow's eyes darted toward the back door, her instinct to flee evident in every line of her body. No, wait. Rebecca caught her arm gently. Hiding will only make things appear suspicious. Stay with me. You've done nothing wrong, and neither have I. Despite her reassuring words, worry creased Rebecca's brow as she smoothed her apron and moved to the door. Willow positioned herself slightly behind her, where she could observe without being immediately noticed. The wagon came to a stop outside. Thomas, a balding man in his 50s, climbed down first, followed by a tall figure wearing a star-shaped badge, Sheriff Miller. "Afternoon, Miss Montgomery," Thomas called as they approached. "Hope we're not disturbing you." "Not at all," Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite the tension Willow could feel radiating from her. "What brings you gentlemen out this way?" Sheriff Miller stepped forward, removing his hat. "Just checking on the outlying homesteads, ma'am. After that trouble at the trading ground yesterday, thought it prudent to make sure everyone's safe." His gaze shifted past Rebecca, landing on Willow with surprise. "I see you have company." "Yes," Rebecca said simply. "This is Willow. She's my guest." The men exchanged glances loaded with unspoken questions. Thomas cleared his throat. "Miss Montgomery, there's been some talk in town. Fletcher and his boys were making accusations about Indian raiders. And now there's word from the Blackfoot camp that one of their young women has gone missing." Willow felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. So soon. She hadn't expected her absence to be noted, much less reported, until at least the next day. Sheriff Miller studied Willow with careful neutrality. "Would you happen to be that young woman?" "Miss," Rebecca answered before Willow could respond. "Willow is here by choice, Sheriff. She harms no one and is under my protection." "Miss Montgomery," the sheriff said, his tone measured, "I respect your independence, but this situation is unusual. The treaty has strict provisions about tribal members leaving designated territories without official permission. Treaties also guarantee individual rights," Rebecca countered. "Willow is not a prisoner of her tribe." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "There's talk of sending a delegation to the army post if she isn't found. Could make things difficult, especially after yesterday's incident." Sheriff Miller nodded. "Miss Montgomery, may I speak with you privately?" Rebecca hesitated, glancing at Willow, who gave a small nod of assurance. "Very well. Willow, would you mind waiting inside? This won't take long." As Rebecca stepped outside with the men, closing the door behind her, Willow moved to the window. Though she couldn't hear their words clearly, the conversation appeared tense. The sheriff gestured emphatically. Thomas shook his head repeatedly. Rebecca stood with arms crossed, her posture unyielding. After several minutes, Rebecca returned alone, her expression troubled but determined. "They've gone to report." "That you're safe," she said. "The sheriff wasn't happy, but he acknowledges that legally you have the right to be here. Thomas was more concerned about what the town will think." She sank into a chair, suddenly looking tired. "I'm afraid this may make things difficult for both of us. The settlers and your tribe have a fragile peace. Your presence here could be seen as disrupting that balance." Willow knelt beside her, distress evident in her eyes. She gestured toward the door, then the distant hills where the Blackfoot camp lay. "No," Rebecca said firmly. "I won't send you back if you don't wish to go. You came here seeking something, a chance to develop your gift, to be seen for who you truly are. I won't deny you that opportunity." She took Willow's hands in hers. "But you should understand what this means. There will be talk, suspicion from both sides. My standing in the community may suffer, and your tribe, they may see this as betrayal." Willow's expression grew somber with the weight of this reality. After a moment's thought, she rose and retrieved her charcoal and paper. With swift strokes, she drew two figures standing back to back, facing opposing forces that threatened to engulf them. Yet between the figures a light glowed, creating a protected space. Rebecca studied the drawing, understanding dawning in her eyes. Together, she said softly. "We face this together." Willow nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Then we'll need a plan." Rebecca's practical nature reasserted itself. "First, you'll need proper clothing, not to erase who you are, but to attract less attention when necessary, and we should establish a routine, including your lessons." She hesitated, then added, "And if you're willing, I think you should come to the schoolhouse with me. Not as a student, you're too old for that, but as my assistant. The children would benefit from your artistic knowledge, and it would help the community see your value." This suggestion clearly surprised Willow. She pointed to herself, then made a sweeping gesture that encompassed her indigenous appearance, her silence, her otherness in the settler community. "Yes, you," Rebecca confirmed. "Your difference is not a liability, Willow. It's a gift. These children have never seen someone who communicates as you do, who sees the world through your eyes. What better way to build understanding than through education?" The conviction in Rebecca's voice stirred something in Willow's heart, a tentative hope that perhaps her silence was not an ending but a beginning, that perhaps her journey from rejection to this red door was not random chance, but purpose unfolding. As dusk settled over the Montana territory, the two women sat by the fire, sharing tea and quiet companionship. Tomorrow would bring challenges, disapproval, curiosity, perhaps even danger, but tonight in this small cabin with its red door, they had found something rare and precious, understanding across the divide. And for Willow, who had lived so long in the shadows of others' fears, it felt like stepping into a new dawn. The schoolhouse bell rang clear and bright in the Montana morning. Children from the scattered homesteads around Riverstone hurried toward the simple wooden building, lunch pails swinging, voices raised in excited chatter. Inside, Rebecca put final touches on the day's lessons, written neatly across the blackboard, while Willow arranged art supplies at a small side table. 1 week had passed since Willow's arrival at the cabin with the red door. 7 days of adjustments, preparations, and quiet conversations expressed through drawings, gestures, and Rebecca's increasingly perceptive understanding of Willow's unspoken language. Today marked a new chapter. Willow's first day accompanying Rebecca to the schoolhouse. They had prepared carefully. Willow wore a simple dress Rebecca had altered from her own clothing, practical yet dignified. Her long black hair was braided and pinned up in a style that neither hid nor emphasized her. Indigenous features. Around her neck, visible above her collar, hung the wooden pendant Grey Wolf had given her, a deliberate choice to maintain connection with her heritage. "Remember," Rebecca said quietly as the first students began to enter, "you belong here, as much as anyone. Stand tall," Willow nodded, her chin lifting slightly though her eyes betrayed apprehension. The pendant felt warm against her skin, a reminder of Grey Wolf's parting words. "The path between our worlds is narrow and treacherous." The children entered in typical disarray, some boisterous, others shy, ages ranging from 6 to 14. They stared openly at Willow, curiosity overriding manners. A few of the older ones whispered behind their hands. "Good morning, class," Rebecca called, bringing order with her warm but firm tone. "Before we begin our lessons, I'd like to introduce Miss Willow Reed, who will be assisting me in teaching art and natural studies." A small girl in the front row raised her hand immediately. "Is she an Indian, Miss Montgomery?" "Miss Reed is from the Blackfoot tribe," Rebecca confirmed calmly, "and she is an exceptionally talented artist who has agreed to share her knowledge with us." Another hand shot up, a freckled boy of about 12. "My pa says Indians don't belong in white schools." Rebecca's expression remained composed, though Willow noticed her shoulders tense slightly. "In this schoolhouse, Daniel, we judge people by their character and contributions, not by where they were born or what they look like. Miss Reed has much to teach us, if we're wise enough to learn." She moved smoothly to Willow's side. "Miss Reed communicates through her art rather than words. This gives her a unique perspective that I believe will benefit all of you. She can't talk? A small boy asked, eyes wide with fascination rather than judgment. She speaks through other means, Rebecca corrected gently. Today, she'll demonstrate how art can tell stories as clearly as words, perhaps even more powerfully. With that, she directed the students to take out their slates for the morning mathematics lesson. As the children focused on their work, Willow moved quietly around the room, observing. Occasionally, she stopped to watch a struggling student, offering encouragement through a gentle smile or nod. When mathematics concluded, Rebecca announced, "For our next hour, Miss Reed will lead us in an art lesson. Please give her your complete attention and respect." Willow stepped forward, her heart pounding beneath her calm exterior. On the large table at the front of the room, she had already arranged leaves, feathers, small stones, and other natural objects collected that morning. With deliberate movements, she selected a piece of paper and began to draw, allowing the children to gather around and watch. Under her skilled hands, a simple leaf became extraordinary, every vein and subtle curve captured with precision and feeling. When she finished, she motioned for the children to select their own objects and attempt the same. What followed was a lesson unlike any the children had experienced. Without words, through demonstration and gentle guidance, Willow taught them to truly see what they were drawing, not just the shape but the essence. When a frustrated student crumpled his paper, Willow smoothed it out and showed him how the wrinkles themselves could become part of the art. Imperfection transformed into beauty. By lesson's end, the initial wariness had largely dissolved. The children proudly displayed their drawings, many showing surprising improvement under Willow's tutelage. Even Daniel, who had questioned her presence, beamed when she nodded approval at his carefully rendered oak leaf. Rebecca watched with quiet satisfaction. "Thank you, Miss Reed," she said as the children returned to their seats. "I believe we've all learned something valuable today." The remainder of the morning passed in routine lessons. When the noon bell rang, the children spilled outside to eat their lunches in the schoolyard. Rebecca and Willow stayed inside, sharing the simple meal they had packed that morning. "You were wonderful," Rebecca said, her face alight with genuine pride. "Did you see how they responded to you? By the end, they'd forgotten to be suspicious." Willow's smile acknowledged the compliment, though her eyes remained watchful. The children might adapt quickly, but she knew adult opinions would not shift so easily. As if confirming her thoughts, the schoolhouse door opened without warning. A tall man in a well-cut suit entered, followed by two women in fashionable dresses. Rebecca rose immediately, her expression cooling from warmth to professional courtesy. "Mr. Hamilton, Mrs. Peterson, Mrs. Grayson, what brings the school board here today?" Hamilton, a square-jawed man with graying temples, fixed his gaze on Willow. "We received some concerning reports, Miss Montgomery, about an unauthorized addition to our teaching staff." The woman called Mrs. Peterson sniffed audibly. "Really, Miss Montgomery, we entrust you with our children's education, and you bring a savage into the schoolhouse without consultation." Rebecca's spine straightened, though her voice remained even. "Miss Reed is here at my invitation, as a guest instructor in art. The children have benefited enormously from her expertise just this morning." "That's hardly the point," Hamilton replied. "There are procedures, Miss Montgomery, standards. The school board must approve all teaching appointments." "Miss Reed is not an appointment," Rebecca countered. "She's my guest, sharing her considerable talents voluntarily." Mrs. Grayson, a thin woman with a permanently pinched expression, stepped forward. "We've been patient with your unconventional ideas, Miss Montgomery." Your interest in native crafts, your inclusion of nature, studies beyond the standard curriculum. But this crosses a line. What line would that be, Mrs. Grayson? Rebecca asked. The line of providing our students with exposure to artistic excellence, or the line of treating all human beings with dignity and respect? Hamilton's face flushed. Now see here. No, Mr. Hamilton, you see here. Rebecca gestured to the children's drawings displayed on the wall. This is what Miss Reed accomplished in one morning. Show me a teacher from Boston or Chicago who could achieve the same. The school board members examined the drawings with grudging attention. Even to critical eyes, the quality was undeniable, far beyond typical student work. Furthermore, Rebecca continued, Miss Reed's knowledge of local plants and their properties will greatly enhance our natural studies curriculum. The children were completely engaged, regardless of age or ability. Hamilton cleared his throat. Be that as it may, there are community concerns. Fletcher and his friends have been vocal at the saloon about Indian sympathizers, and Reverend Parker has expressed serious reservations about heathen influences on impressionable minds. Throughout this exchange, Willow had remained seated, her imposture dignified, but her eyes downcast in the manner she had learned kept conflict at bay. Now she rose silently and went to the blackboard. With a piece of chalk she began to draw. The adults fell silent, watching as swift, sure strokes created a scene, the schoolroom as seen from the back, showing children engaged in their lessons. The detail was remarkable, individual expressions, captured in white lines against black. In the drawing, the children looked alive with curiosity and joy in learning. When she finished, Willow turned to face the board members, her expression questioning. The message was clear. Isn't this what matters most? Mrs. Peterson's stern countenance softened slightly. She is talented, I'll grant that. The girl can draw, Hamilton conceded, but she can't speak. At all. Miss Reed communicates quite effectively, Rebecca said, just not in the manner you're accustomed to. Mrs. Grayson remained unconvinced. What about her background? Her character? We know nothing of her people or their ways. I know her character, Rebecca stated firmly. I trust her. With the children without reservation. Hamilton exchanged glances with the two women, then sighed. We'll need to discuss this as a full board. For now, she may continue as your guest, but she must be supervised at all times and at the first sign of any impropriety or negative influence. This arrangement ends. After the board members departed, Rebecca released a long breath. That went better than I feared, she admitted, though the battle isn't over. Willow nodded her understanding. She had recognized the pattern. From her years in the tribe, initial rejection, grudging tolerance, and a long path to potential acceptance. The difference here was having Rebecca as an ally, standing firm beside her. When the children returned from lunch, they were full of questions about the visitors. Rebecca acknowledged the school board's concerns honestly, but reassured them that Miss Reed would continue teaching art and natural studies. The announcement was met with surprising enthusiasm, especially from the younger students, who had responded most strongly to Willow's visual teaching methods. The afternoon passed without further incident. As the final bell rang and the children dispersed to their homes, Rebecca and Willow gathered their belongings for the walk back to the cabin. They were just locking the schoolhouse door when the sound of approaching horses made them turn. 4 riders approached, not settlers from Riverstone, but Blackfoot men in traditional dress. At their head rode Chief Running Elk, his face stern beneath his ceremonial headdress. Rebecca instinctively moved closer to Willow, though she maintained a composed expression. Chief Running Elk, she greeted him with a respectful nod. What brings you to Riverstone? The chief dismounted, his movements deliberate and dignified. We come for the one who left without permission. His dark eyes fixed on Willow, who met His gaze steadily despite the fear Rebecca could sense in her slight frame. "Willow is here by her own choice," Rebecca said carefully. "She has harmed no one and broken no law." One of the other riders spoke sharply in the Blackfoot language. Chief Running Elk raised a hand, silencing him, then addressed Rebecca again. "The treaty says our people stay in our territory. The girl brings risk to the peace between us. The treaty also guarantees individual rights," Rebecca countered, echoing her words to Sheriff Miller. "Willow has chosen to learn settler ways while honoring her heritage. Surely that bridge of understanding serves the peace better than forced separation." Chief Running Elk's expression remained impassive, but his next words held a note of grudging respect for her argument. "You speak well, teacher woman, but words do not change that she belongs with her people." At this, Willow stepped forward. From her pocket, she withdrew a folded paper, a drawing she had prepared after the encounter with Sheriff Miller, anticipating this moment. She handed it to Chief Running Elk with a respectful bow of her head. The chief unfolded the paper, studying the image intently. Rebecca caught glimpses of the drawing, two circles overlapping, one containing symbols of tribal life, the other showing elements of settler society. In the overlapping section stood a solitary figure, Willow herself, with hands extended toward both sides. For a long moment, Chief Running Elk considered the drawing. When he looked up, his stern expression had softened slightly. "Grey Wolf said you would choose this path," he said to Willow. "He said the spirits showed him your gift would grow stronger away from us, only to return when the time was right." He turned to Rebecca. "Grey Wolf is our most respected medicine man. If he has seen this future for her, I cannot stand against it." Relief washed through Rebecca, though she was careful not to show it too plainly. "Thank you for your understanding. Chief Running Elk, I promise you Willow is safe here and her heritage is respected." The chief nodded once. "We will watch, we will wait. When the next full moon comes, we will return to hear from her own hands." He gestured to Willow's drawings. "How she fares among your people." Before turning to leave, he spoke directly to Willow in their native tongue. Rebecca couldn't understand the words, but she saw Willow's eyes widen slightly, her posture straightening with what appeared to be renewed determination. As the Blackfoot riders departed, Rebecca turned to Willow. "What did he say to you?" Willow considered how to convey the message, then mimicked writing in her palm and pointed to her heart. Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes. "He wants you to record your true feelings, to be honest about your experience here." Willow nodded, her expression solemn. The chief's exact words had been more complex, a reminder of her responsibility, to both preserve her tribal ways and to learn the power of the settlers, to be a bridge between worlds rather than lost to either. But Rebecca had grasped the essence. The two women walked in thoughtful silence toward the cabin with the red door. Their first day of public partnership had brought both challenges and unexpected support. The path ahead remained uncertain, but they had taken the first steps together. That evening, as Rebecca prepared their simple dinner, Willow sat by the window with her drawing materials. The pendulum swing of the day's events had left her with much to process: the children's acceptance, the school board's suspicion, Chief Running Elk's surprising acquiescence. Rather than words in a journal, she recorded her experiences in images, powerful, evocative scenes that captured the emotional truth of each encounter. Rebecca watched her work with quiet admiration. "You know," she said as she set plates on the table, "I've been thinking about what you showed the chief today, the overlapping circles. That's exactly what we're creating here, isn't it? Not forcing you to abandon your world for mine, nor keeping the worlds forever separate. Instead, find the shared space where both can exist together." Willow looked up from her drawing, her expression thoughtful. After a moment, she added a new element to her current sketch: a small flame burning at the point where the circles intersected. A light in the darkness, Rebecca observed. Yes, that's what understanding brings, even when it's just beginning. As they shared their meal, Rebecca told Willow stories of her own childhood in Boston, the strict societal expectations, her father's unusual willingness to educate his daughter in subjects typically reserved for men, her early loss of her mother. In turn, Willow created small, quick sketches of her tribal life before the raid, hunting expeditions, ceremonial dances, the wisdom teachings of the elders. In this exchange, something profound was taking shape, not just understanding between two individuals, but the possibility of a larger bridge, a template for connection rather than conflict between their peoples. Later, as moonlight streamed through the cabin windows, Rebecca began Willow's first formal reading lesson. They started with the alphabet, Rebecca writing each letter while pronouncing its sound. Willow copied each character with the precise hand of an artist, quickly grasping the visual patterns. By lesson's end, she could recognize several simple words: cat, dog, tree, sun. More importantly, she had begun to understand the correlation between spoken sounds and written symbols, the code that would unlock the written language of the settlers. "You learn quickly," Rebecca observed as they prepared for bed. "Tomorrow, we'll begin with sentences and perhaps try some simple books from my collection." Willow nodded, her eyes bright with the satisfaction of new knowledge. For all the day's challenges, this moment felt like victory, a step toward a future where her silence would no longer limit her ability to communicate with the wider world. As she drifted toward sleep in the small alcove Rebecca had transformed into her bedroom, Willow thought of Grey Wolf's parting words. "The future is a river with many branches." Despite the obstacles they had encountered, despite those surely still to come, she felt certainty growing within her. She had chosen the right path. And for the first time since the night of the raid 7 years ago, Willow Reed dreamed without fear. Autumn painted the Montana landscape in gold and crimson as September gave way to October. Nearly a month had passed since Willow's first day at the schoolhouse. Each morning, she and Rebecca walked the path from the cabin with the red door to Riverstone, sometimes gathering interesting leaves or seed pods for the day's art lessons. In that time, remarkable transformations had occurred. Willow's reading skills had progressed with astonishing speed, her artist's eye quickly recognizing patterns in letters and words, her quick mind grasping the structure of written language. She now read at the level of Rebecca's intermediate students and kept a journal filled with both words and images documenting her experiences. The children's initial curiosity about their silent teacher had evolved into genuine affection. Willow's art lessons became the highlight of their school week, with students proudly displaying their progress to skeptical parents. Her knowledge of native plants had enriched their natural studies curriculum, teaching them to identify which berries were safe to eat, which barks held medicinal properties, which flowers could be used for dyes. Even some of the townspeople had begun to soften their stance. Mrs. Peterson, initially the most vocal critic on the school board, had reluctantly admitted that her daughter's drawing ability had improved remarkably under Willow's tutelage. Thomas from the general store now greeted Willow with a nod when she accompanied Rebecca on shopping trips. Sheriff Miller made a point of riding past the schoolhouse during recess, ostensibly to check on security, but increasingly to admire the outdoor art projects Willow conducted with the children. Yet, beneath this surface, acceptance, currents of unease still flowed. Reverend Parker continued to preach thinly veiled sermons about foreign influences and heathen practices. Fletcher and his mining friends made crude remarks whenever Rebecca and Willow passed the saloon, and the whispered conversations that stopped when they entered rooms reminded them that their unusual partnership remained suspect in many eyes. On this particular morning, Rebecca noticed Willow was unusually quiet, even for her. As they walked toward town, a crisp breeze stirring fallen leaves around their feet, she finally asked, "What's troubling you? You've barely touched your breakfast." Willow hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a piece of folded paper. She handed it to Rebecca with evident concern. Rebecca unfolded the paper to find a drawing, one of Willow's prophetic visions. Dark clouds gathered over the schoolhouse. Shadowy figures approached from multiple directions. At the center stood two women back to back, facing the encroaching darkness. "You've seen this in your dreams?" Rebecca asked quietly. Willow nodded, her expression solemn. "Do you know when?" Willow pointed to the horizon, where actual clouds were beginning to mass. Not storm clouds, but the first hint of a weather change. "Soon, then." Rebecca studied the drawing more closely. "These figures, some appear to be settlers, others from your tribe." Another nod, more emphatic. Rebecca folded the paper carefully and returned it to Willow. "Thank you for the warning. We'll be vigilant." They continued toward Riverstone, both alert for signs of the coming conflict. The town seemed normal as they approached. Shopkeepers opening their businesses, farmers bringing produce to market, children racing ahead to the schoolhouse. Yet Rebecca noticed subtle tensions. Conversations that hushed as they passed, glances that lingered too long, small groups gathered in earnest discussion. The school day began as usual. Rebecca led the morning prayers and pledges, then set the older students to their history lessons, while she worked with the younger ones on reading. Willow moved quietly among them, assisting where needed, her gentle guidance particularly helpful to struggling students. Just before the noon break, a knock interrupted their lessons. Rebecca opened the door to find Thomas from the general store, his expression troubled. "Miss Montgomery, might I have a word? Privately?" Nodding to Willow to continue supervising the students, Rebecca stepped outside. "What is it, Thomas?" He twisted his hat in his hands. "Riders came in from Fort Ellis this morning. They're saying there's been trouble with the Blackfoot up north. Some cattle stolen from the Henderson place. Army's been called in." Rebecca frowned. "The Blackfoot around here have kept to the peace agreements. Chief Running Elk wouldn't condone stealing." "That's just it," Thomas continued. "Word is it wasn't Running Elk's band, but a breakaway group, young warriors tired of the chief's accommodations with settlers. But folks here—" He glanced toward the schoolhouse. "Well, some are making no distinction." "I see." Rebecca's mind raced, assessing implications, and Fletcher, Thomas's grimace, confirmed her fears. In the saloon since dawn, talking big about teaching savages a lesson. Sheriff's keeping an eye on him, but Miller can only do so much. "Thank you for the warning, Thomas." As he turned to leave, he added awkwardly, "For what it's worth, Miss Montgomery, I think what you're doing with that girl is decent. Teaching her our ways, civilizing her. But not everyone sees it that way. Some think you're too friendly with the Indians." Rebecca bit back a sharp response about civilizing and our ways, reminding herself that Thomas meant well by his standards. "We all have much to learn from each other," she said instead. "Will you join us for the Harvest Festival next week?" Willow is helping the children prepare quite a display of artwork. The invitation, normal, everyday, inclusive, seemed to reassure him. "My wife would enjoy that, I expect. She's always had an eye for pretty things." After Thomas departed, Rebecca returned to the classroom, her outward calm masking growing concern. Willow caught her eye immediately, sensing the change in her demeanor. With a subtle gesture, Rebecca indicated they would discuss it later. The afternoon lessons proceeded without incident, though Rebecca noticed Willow glancing frequently toward the windows, as if expecting the vision in her drawing to materialize at any moment. When the final bell rang, Rebecca kept the children inside slightly longer than usual, giving them additional assignments for the next day before dismissing them. As the last student departed, she secured the schoolhouse door and turned to Willow. "Oh, we need to be careful walking home today. There's been trouble with a group of Blackfoot to the north. Not your people." but others. Some in town are angry and looking for targets. Willow's expression registered understanding rather than surprise. She pointed to her earlier drawing, then to her temple. She had foreseen this. "Yes," Rebecca acknowledged. "Your vision seems to be coming true. We should—" The sound of approaching horses interrupted her. Moving to the window, Rebecca peered out cautiously. 4 riders approached from the direction of town, Fletcher among them, already visibly intoxicated despite the early hour. From the opposite direction came another group on horseback, Blackfoot warriors, including 2 she recognized from Chief Running Elk's band. "They're coming from both sides," she said quietly, "just as in your drawing." Willow joined her at the window, her body tensing as she recognized the approaching tribal members. She quickly sketched something on a piece of paper and showed it to Rebecca, a face rendered in quick, expressive lines. Rebecca recognized Grey Wolf, the medicine man Willow had mentioned in her journal. Grey Wolf is with them? Is that good or bad? Willow's expression was complex, relief mingled with apprehension. She made a balancing gesture with her hands, suggesting the medicine man's presence might help maintain peace, but nothing was certain. Rebecca assessed their options quickly. "We can't leave now. We'd be caught between them. Better to stay inside, at least until we understand their intentions." Fletcher's group reached the schoolhouse first, dismounting with the clumsy movements of men affected by alcohol. Fletcher pounded on the door, his voice loud and slurred. "Come out, Miss Montgomery. Time to decide where your loyalties lie." Rebecca exchanged a glance with Willow, whose face had gone very still. "Stay back," she whispered, then approached the door without opening it. "What do you want, Mr. Fletcher?" she called through the wooden panels. "Armies riding out to teach those thieving Indians a lesson," Fletcher shouted. But seems we got our own Indian problem right here in Riverstone. Time to clean house before more cattle go missing." One of his companions added, "Or worse. You think they just want cows? What about our women and children?" Rebecca's voice remained steady. "Willow has nothing to do with any trouble up north. She's been here every day, teaching your children art and nature study. Many of you have praised her work yourselves." "Indians stick together," Fletcher insisted. "How do we know she ain't passing information back to her people, telling them where the best pickings are?" Before Rebecca could respond, hoofbeats announced the arrival of the Blackfoot group. Fletcher and his men turned, hands moving to their weapons. The Indigenous riders stopped at a cautious distance, Grey Wolf at their head despite his advanced age. "More of them are coming," one of Fletcher's men exclaimed. "See, they're here for her." Inside the schoolhouse, Willow moved swiftly to Rebecca's side. Her face showed determination rather than fear as she reached for the door handle. "Willow, no!" Rebecca protested. "It's too dangerous." But Willow's expression was resolute. She pointed to herself, then outside, making it clear she believed. Her presence might diffuse the situation. Before Rebecca could stop her, she had unlatched the door and stepped onto the schoolhouse porch. A momentary hush fell over both groups as she appeared. Willow stood straight, her gaze moving calmly from the settlers to the Blackfoot warriors. Then, with deliberate steps, she descended and walked to a position between the 2 opposing parties. Rebecca followed, her heart pounding but her voice steady as she addressed both groups. "This is neutral ground. There will be no violence here." Grey Wolf dismounted slowly, his aged body moving with dignity despite obvious discomfort. He spoke in the Blackfoot language, gesturing toward Willow. One of the younger warriors translated, "For Fletcher's benefit, he says the girl is under tribe protection. Chief Running Elk has declared it. You harm her, you break the treaty." Fletcher spat on the ground. "Treaty's already broken. Your people stole cattle, killed a man up at Henderson's place." Grey Wolf shook his head as the translation reached him. He spoke again, the young warrior interpreting. "Not Blackfoot, not our people. Crow renegades, maybe. Or white men wanting to blame Indians." "Convenient excuse," Fletcher sneered. All we know is Indians took our horses at Wolf Creek, and now they're taking our cattle. How long before they're taking our scalps?" The tension mounted visibly, men on both sides fingering weapons. Willow, still standing in the space between them, suddenly knelt and began to draw in the dirt with her finger. The unexpected action drew all eyes to her. With swift, sure strokes, she created an image that both groups could recognize, a map of the territory, showing the Blackfoot lands, the settlement, and the areas to the north where the trouble had occurred. She indicated the substantial distance between Running Elk's territory and the Henderson Ranch. Then the rugged terrain between that would make a Blackfoot raid impractical. Grey Wolf nodded approvingly as she worked, adding his own comment, which the warrior translated. "Our chief says any Blackfoot who breaks peace will answer to him. We police our own." "That's supposed to make us feel better." Fletcher scoffed, but some of his companions looked less certain now. Rebecca seized the moment of hesitation. "Sheriff Miller should be consulted before any action is taken, and the army will investigate properly. Taking matters into your own hands would only create more victims, not justice." As if summoned by her words, the sound of another horse approaching drew their attention. Sheriff Miller rode up, his expression grim as he took in the confrontation. "What's going on here?" he demanded, dismounting and moving to stand near Willow and Rebecca. "Preventing a regrettable mistake," Rebecca replied. "Mr. Fletcher and his friends seem to think attacking one peaceful Blackfoot woman will somehow address cattle rustling 40 miles north of here." The sheriff surveyed the scene with a lawman's experienced eye. "Fletcher, you and your boys been drinking since noon. Go sleep it off. Any trouble here and I'll have you in cells before sundown." Fletcher wavered, his determination visibly eroding in the face of legal authority. "Just doing what the Army's too slow to handle," he muttered. "Army's handling it their way," Miller countered. "Captain Harris already rode out with a detachment to investigate, proper-like." He turned to the Blackfoot delegation. "Grey Wolf, I assume Chief Running Elk knows you're here?" Grey Wolf nodded, speaking through his translator. "Chief sends us to ensure the girl's safety. Too many hotheads, not enough wisdom." His sharp glance included both Fletcher's group and his own younger warriors. Sheriff Miller nodded. "Fair enough. But tensions are high. Best if you all return to your territory until this is sorted." For a moment, it seemed resolution might be at hand. Then Fletcher, unwilling to back down completely, pointed accusingly at Willow. "She still doesn't belong here, filling our children's heads with Indian notions. Next thing, they'll be painting their faces and dancing around fires." Grey Wolf surprised everyone by chuckling, a sound that needed no translation. Through his interpreter, he said, "Girl teaches your children to see beauty in the world around them, to know plants that heal, not just harm. This is threat." His simple logic diffused some of the tension. Even one of Fletcher's companions shifted uncomfortably. "My boy did make a fine drawing of our farm," he admitted reluctantly. "Mrs. has it hung up proud in the kitchen." Willow, still kneeling between the groups, reached into her pocket and withdrew several folded papers. She handed them to the sheriff, who opened them with curiosity. They were drawings, portraits of the schoolchildren, captured with such sensitivity and skill that their personalities shone through the simple lines. Miller showed them to Fletcher's group, then passed them to Grey Wolf. "This is what she's teaching. Seems to me there's worse things a child could learn." A murmur of reluctant appreciation ran through the gathering. The moment of imminent violence had passed, replaced by an uneasy truce. Sheriff Miller took control of the situation. "Fletcher, you and your boys head back to town. Now. Grey Wolf, I give you my word as sheriff that the girl will be protected. No harm will come to her in my jurisdiction." Grey Wolf considered this, then nodded gravely. He approached Willow and spoke to her directly in their native tongue. Though Rebecca couldn't understand the words, she saw Willow's expression shift. From tension to solemn acceptance, the old medicine man placed his hand briefly on Willow's head in what appeared to be a blessing, then returned to his horse. As both groups dispersed, Rebecca released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Sheriff Miller remained, watching, until Fletcher and his men were well on their way back to town. "That was closer than I like," he commented. "You two should be more careful." Rebecca straightened her shoulders. "We've done nothing wrong, Sheriff." "Never said you did." Miller's weathered face softened slightly. "But these are complicated times. Might be best if you both stayed out at your place for a few days. Let tempers cool." Willow tugged gently at Rebecca's sleeve, nodding agreement with the sheriff's suggestion. "Very well," Rebecca conceded. "We'll gather what we need from the schoolhouse and head directly home. Please inform the school board that classes will resume next week." After the sheriff departed, they quickly collected essential teaching materials and personal items from the schoolhouse. As they secured the building, Rebecca turned to Willow. "What did Grey Wolf say to you?" Willow considered how to express the complex message, then opened her journal and wrote carefully, "He said I am walking between worlds now, that each step creates a new path where none existed before, that such walking brings danger but also possibility." Rebecca read the words thoughtfully. "He's right. What we're doing, it hasn't been done before, not like this. We're finding a new way forward." As they walked home through the gathering dusk, Willow added something to her journal, then showed Rebecca. "He also said a storm comes. Not just today's storm, bigger. We must be strong like a willow tree, bend but not break." The ominous warning hung between them as they approached the cabin with the red door. Yet alongside the concern, Rebecca felt an unexpected surge of determination. Today they had faced direct confrontation and emerged unscathed. Small victories accumulated, changing minds one person at a time. That evening, as wind began to rattle the cabin windows, they sat beside the fire, Rebecca reading aloud from a book of poetry while Willow sketched. The simple domestic scene belied the day's tensions, creating a pocket of peace amid gathering storms. When Rebecca paused in her reading, Willow showed her the sketch she had been working on, not another vision of conflict, but an image of the school children gathered around her in a circle, their faces alight with discovery. In the background stood Rebecca, watching with pride. "Is this what you see for our future?" Rebecca asked. Willow nodded, her expression serene despite the day's turmoil. She pointed to the drawing, then to her heart. This vision came not from prophetic dreams, but from hope. Rebecca smiled, finding renewed courage in Willow's quiet confidence. "Then that's what we'll work toward, no matter what storms come our way." Outside, the wind rose to a howl, bending the trees but not breaking them. Inside the cabin with the red door, two women from different worlds had created something new, a shared space where both could exist in harmony, a model in miniature of what might someday be possible on a larger scale. As they prepared for bed, Rebecca found herself thinking of Grey Wolf's words as Willow had recorded them. Each step creates a new path where none existed before. They were pathmakers, she realized, forging a trail through uncharted territory, not knowing where it might lead, but moving forward nonetheless. And for tonight, at least, they were safe, together, and resolute in their shared purpose. The days following the confrontation at the schoolhouse passed in tense seclusion. Rebecca and Willow remained at the cabin as Sheriff Miller had suggested, venturing out only to tend the garden and care for the animals. News from town came through Thomas, who rode out twice to deliver supplies and update them on the situation. "Army sent word back," he reported on his second visit, "found evidence it was Renegade Crow, not Blackfoot, who raided the Henderson place. Even Fletcher's quieted down, though I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him." Rebecca received this confirmation of Grey Wolf's assessment with grim satisfaction. "And the school board? Will they allow classes to resume next week? Thomas nodded. Mrs. Peterson's been surprisingly vocal in your defense. Says Emily's reading improved more in a month with your new methods than in the entire previous year. The board voted yesterday. You can reopen Monday and... He glanced at Willow. Your assistant is welcome to continue, provided there's no further trouble. During this period of isolation, Willow's education advanced rapidly. Without the distractions of the schoolhouse, Rebecca focused entirely on her pupil, moving from basic reading to more complex texts, introducing mathematical concepts and expanding her understanding of settler history and customs. Willow proved an extraordinarily quick study. Her journal entries grew from simple phrases to complete paragraphs. She devoured Rebecca's small library, showing particular interest in books about art and natural science. Most remarkably, she began experimenting with written English as a form of artistic expression, creating illustrated poems that combined words and images in unique ways. This is extraordinary, Rebecca commented one evening, examining Willow's latest creation, a poem about autumn where the words themselves formed the shape of falling leaves on the page. You're not just learning our language, you're transforming it. Willow smiled at the praise, then wrote in her journal, words are like drawing, lines that make meaning, different kind of pictures. This insight struck Rebecca profoundly. Exactly. That's exactly it. And perhaps that's why you're learning. So quickly, you see the patterns, the underlying structure. On the Sunday before their scheduled return to the schoolhouse, Rebecca brought up the upcoming Harvest Festival. It's an important community event, she explained. Each family brings food to share, children present songs and recitations, and everyone celebrates the successful growing season. She hesitated before continuing. The school board wants our students to participate as usual. It would be a very public reappearance for us after the incident. Are you prepared for that? Willow considered the question seriously, then wrote, we cannot hide forever. Festival is good time to show our work. You're right, Rebecca agreed, and the children have created such beautiful harvest-themed artwork under your guidance. It deserves to be displayed. The morning of their return to the schoolhouse dawned bright and clear. Rebecca noticed Willow took special care with her appearance, wearing the new dress they had sewn together, a design that respectfully blended settler and indigenous elements. Her long black hair was neatly braided, the wooden pendant from grey, wolf visible at her throat. Ready? Rebecca asked as they prepared to leave. Willow nodded, her expression composed, though her eyes betrayed a hint of apprehension. She had added a new item to her daily possessions, a small portfolio containing her best drawings, including several portraits of the schoolchildren that had helped diffuse the confrontation days earlier. Their welcome at the schoolhouse was warmer than expected. Several children rushed to greet Willow with excitement, showing her drawings they had created at home during the closure. Even Daniel, who had initially questioned her presence, presented a carefully rendered sketch of his family's harvest for her approval. We missed you, Miss Reed, little Sarah Miller said simply, taking Willow's hand. School's not the same without Art Day. The rest of the week passed in a flurry of activity as they balanced regular lessons with preparations for the Harvest Festival. The children created spectacular artwork under Willow's guidance, cornucopias filled with detailed illustrations of local produce, landscape scenes showing the progression of seasons, and a collaborative mural depicting the community working together at harvest time. Rebecca, watching Willow direct this artistic outpouring with graceful gestures and expressive demonstrations, felt a surge of pride. In just over a month, the silent, wary girl who had arrived at her red door had transformed into a confident teacher, communicating effectively despite, or perhaps because of, her unique methods. On Friday afternoon, as they arranged the students' work for the festival, Rebecca commented on this evolution. You've found your voice, Willow, not in the way most would define it, but something more powerful in many ways. Willow paused in her work, seeming to truly absorb this observation. She wrote in her journal, "Two kinds of voice, one lost forever, one growing stronger every day." The Harvest Festival was scheduled for Saturday afternoon in the town square. Early that morning, Rebecca and Willow carefully transported the children's artwork from the schoolhouse and began setting up the display. Other townspeople were already busy erecting tables for food, a small platform for performances, and decorations of autumn leaves and pumpkins. Mrs. Peterson approached as they arranged the final pieces. "This is quite impressive," she admitted, examining a detailed drawing of wheat fields at sunset. "Emily talks of nothing but art these days, and her handwriting has improved remarkably as well. She says Miss Reed taught her to see letters as drawings with meaning." Rebecca smiled at this echo of Willow's own insight. "That's exactly right. Willow has a gift for helping children see connections between different types of expression." Mrs. Peterson lowered her voice slightly. "I must tell you, Miss Montgomery, I was among your strongest doubters initially. An Indian in our schoolhouse seemed, well, frankly dangerous, but results speak for themselves." She glanced toward Willow, who was helping several children position their artwork. "The board is considering a formal teaching position for her. Assistant teacher, with a small stipend. Would she be interested, do you think?" Rebecca concealed her surprise at this unexpected development. "I believe she would. But there would be conditions: respect for her heritage, acknowledgement of her unique teaching methods." "Of course," Mrs. Peterson agreed. "We are not barbarians. Progress requires adaptability on all sides." She straightened her shawl primly. "I'll bring it up at the next meeting. Good day, Miss Montgomery." As Mrs. Peterson departed, Rebecca turned to find Willow watching her with questioning eyes. "Good news," Rebecca explained quietly. "The school board is considering offering you an official position, assistant teacher with pay." Willow's eyes widened momentarily. Then she composed her features and nodded thoughtfully. She made a small gesture toward the busy square, indicating they should discuss it later. By noon, the festival was in full swing. Families arrived bearing dishes of roasted meats, fresh bread, apple pies, and preserves. Tables groaned under the weight of the harvest bounty. Children ran excitedly between activities, bobbing for apples, competing in sack races, and proudly showing parents their displayed artwork. Rebecca noticed that while some settlers still kept their distance from Willow, many others now greeted her with cautious respect. The children's enthusiasm proved contagious, breaking down adult reservations as they eagerly dragged parents to see the drawings created under her guidance. Sheriff Miller stopped by their display, tipping his hat politely. "Quite a transformation from last week," he observed. "Amazing what a little understanding can accomplish." The school choir's performance of harvest songs drew everyone to the central platform. Rebecca stood with Willow at the edge of the crowd, both enjoying the simple music and the sense of community it fostered. For a moment, it seemed the tensions of recent weeks had truly dissipated. Then Rebecca noticed a ripple of reaction spreading through the gathering from the direction of the main road. Conversations hushed, heads turned. Stepping slightly aside for a better view, she saw what had caused the disturbance. A small delegation of Blackfoot had entered the town square, led by Chief Running Elk himself. Grey Wolf rode beside him, along, with 4 warriors, and surprisingly, Morning Star, the chief's daughter. They were dressed in formal regalia, clearly indicating this was an official visit. Sheriff Miller moved swiftly to meet them, his posture alert but not aggressive. Rebecca touched Willow's arm gently, drawing her attention to the arrival. Willow's expression shifted through surprise to concern as she recognized her tribal leaders. "Stay here," Rebecca said quietly. "Let's see why they've come before we approach." The town's activities had suspended. all eyes watching the exchange between Sheriff Miller and Chief Running Elk. Though they couldn't hear the conversation, the chief's formal gestures and the sheriff's gradually relaxing posture suggested the visit was peaceful. After several minutes, Miller nodded and turned toward the crowd. "Folks," he announced, "Chief Running Elk has come to participate in our harvest celebration. He brings gifts as a gesture of continued peace between our peoples. I expect everyone to show appropriate hospitality." A murmur ran through the gathering. Surprise, curiosity, and lingering wariness mingled in equal measure. Reverend Parker stepped forward, assuming his role as moral authority. "This is unexpected, Chief Running Elk. Our festival is a Christian celebration of God's bounty." The chief's face remained impassive as a young warrior translated the minister's words. His response, delivered through the same translator, was measured. "The harvest belongs to no single people. The earth provides for all who respect her gifts. We come to honor this shared blessing and to strengthen the bonds between our communities during challenging times." His diplomatic answer impressed even the skeptical reverend, who could hardly argue against such sentiments without appearing ungracious. Mayor Harkins, seizing the opportunity to demonstrate leadership, stepped forward with an exaggerated welcome. "We're honored by your visit, Chief Running Elk. Please join our celebration. There's plenty for all." Throughout this exchange, Willow had remained motionless beside Rebecca, her face revealing complex emotions. Now, as the formal greetings concluded and the chief's party dismounted, she straightened her shoulders and took a deliberate step forward. Rebecca touched her arm. "Are you sure?" Willow nodded, her expression resolute. Together they made their way through the crowd toward the Blackfoot delegation. As they approached, Rebecca noticed Morningstar's eyes narrow at the sight of Willow in her adapted settler clothing. Grey Wolf, however, offered a subtle nod of approval. Chief Running Elk's face remained unreadable as he turned to acknowledge them. "Chief Running Elk," Rebecca greeted him respectfully. "Grey Wolf, welcome to our harvest festival." The chief studied her for a long moment before responding through his translator. "Teacher woman, you keep your word. The girl appears well." Willow stepped forward and respectfully lowered her head to the chief, then to Grey Wolf. To Rebecca's surprise, she had brought her portfolio of drawings. Now she opened it, selecting several pages which she presented to Chief Running Elk with evident meaning. The chief examined the drawings carefully, scenes of the schoolhouse, portraits of children learning, images of Willow teaching art alongside Rebecca. The final drawing showed the school children and several adults from town standing together with Blackfoot figures, sharing knowledge and food in a symbolic scene of cooperation. Grey Wolf leaned in to study this last image, nodding with evident satisfaction. He spoke directly to Willow in their native tongue, too softly for the translator to relay to others. Chief Running Elk handed the drawings to Morningstar, whose initial disdain softened slightly as she examined Willow's skilled artwork. To everyone's surprise, the chief then addressed the gathered townspeople directly, his words translated for all to hear. "When the full moon came, I sent Grey Wolf to hear from Willow Reed's own hands how she fared among you. Today, I come myself, to see truth with my own eyes." He gestured to the displayed student artwork around them. "Our ways teach that true speaking need not always use words. These pictures speak clearly. The girl with no voice has found a way to share wisdom with your children. This honors both our peoples." From a decorated pouch, he withdrew several items, beautifully. Beaded pouches, intricate quillwork pieces, and small carved stone figures. "We bring gifts to mark harvest time. In return, we ask only that the path between our worlds remains open." His gaze returned to Willow. "The girl walks this path now. Not Blackfoot only, not settler only, but something new. The ancestors watch her journey with interest. This public acknowledgement created a remarkable shift in the atmosphere, What had begun as tension transformed into a tentative cultural exchange. Cautiously at first, then, with growing confidence, settlers approached to examine the Blackfoot gifts, while tribal members were invited to sample the harvest foods. Morning Star, after a long moment of apparent internal struggle, approached Willow directly. Their exchange, conducted in the Blackfoot language, seemed intense but not hostile. Rebecca watched carefully, ready to intervene if needed, but Willow's posture remained composed. When Morning Star finally moved away, Willow turned to Rebecca with an expression of cautious hope. She quickly wrote in her journal, "She says, tribe dividing on question of me. Young ones curious about my life here. Some elders still think I bring bad fortune, but the chief's public approval today changes things." The festival continued with an unexpected dimension of cultural sharing. When the school choir performed again, the Blackfoot visitors listened with evident interest. In return, Grey Wolf told a traditional harvest story through the translator, captivating both settler children and adults with its imagery and wisdom. As afternoon shaded toward evening, Rebecca found a quiet moment with Willow away from the main activities. "This is remarkable," she said softly. "I never expected Chief Running Elk to come personally, much less to give his blessing so publicly." Willow nodded, her expression thoughtful as she wrote, "Grey Wolf's influence. He believes in bridges between worlds, has taught this to the chief for many seasons." She hesitated, then added, "Morning Star says my mother once had the same gift of drawing. I never knew this." Rebecca absorbed this revelation. "So your talent has roots in your heritage, even as it grows in new soil here. That seems fitting." As they prepared to return to the main gathering, Reverend Parker approached with Grey Wolf beside him, an unlikely pairing that caused Rebecca to raise an eyebrow in question. "Miss Montgomery," the minister began, his tone more respectful than usual, "Grey Wolf has made an interesting proposal. He suggests an exchange. Occasional visits where Blackfoot elders might share traditional knowledge of local plants and animals with our school children in return for basic reading lessons for some of their younger people." Grey Wolf, observing Willow's surprised expression, spoke through the translator who had accompanied them. "The way forward is not to become the same, but to understand each other. You show this is possible, little Willow." Rebecca considered the revolutionary nature of this proposal, formal educational exchange between settlers and indigenous people, with learning flowing in both directions. "The school board would need to approve," she said carefully, "but I would support such an initiative wholeheartedly." "As would I," Reverend Parker added, surprising them further. "All knowledge ultimately comes from God, after all, and there is wisdom in understanding the natural world He created, even if it comes through unconventional sources." This grudging acceptance from Riverstone's most conservative religious leader marked a significant milestone. As they rejoined the festival, Rebecca noticed subtle but meaningful interactions throughout. A settler woman admiring a Blackfoot woman's beadwork technique, indigenous children cautiously accepting offered apple pie, Grey Wolf and Thomas deep in conversation about weather prediction methods. Small steps, tentative connections, yet profoundly significant against the backdrop of generations of misunderstanding and conflict. As the festival concluded and the Blackfoot delegation prepared to depart, Chief Running Elk approached Willow one final time. Their exchange was brief, but appeared meaningful. When they rode away, Willow's expression held a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness, hope, pride, and determination intermingled. "What did he say?" Rebecca asked as they gathered their belongings. Willow wrote carefully, "He said, I have found my true medicine, the power to build bridges through pictures and learning, that such medicine is rare and needed in these times, that even without a voice, I speak for both peoples now. She paused, then added, he asked if I would return to visit at the next full moon, to show young ones my pictures, and perhaps begin teaching reading to those who wish to learn. Rebecca smiled. Will you go? Willow nodded, her eyes bright with purpose. Bridge must have two sides, she wrote. I belong to both now. As they walked home in the gathering dusk, the harvest festival behind them, Rebecca reflected on the remarkable journey of the past months. The silent, rejected girl, who had appeared at her cabin door, had transformed not only her own life, but had begun to transform an entire community's understanding of what was possible. The path ahead remained uncertain. Fletcher and his friends had been notably absent from the festival, suggesting their resentment still simmered. Challenges would undoubtedly arise as they pushed the boundaries of acceptance further, yet today showed that change, however slow and halting, was possible. At the cabin with the red door, they lit lamps against the autumn darkness and settled into their evening routine. Willow opened her journal and began a new entry, her face serene with purpose as she recorded the day's events, not just in words, but in images that captured their emotional truth. Rebecca, watching her work, felt a deep certainty that they had witnessed the beginning of something significant, a small seed of understanding planted in fertile ground, with the potential to grow into something that might, in time, transform the larger world beyond their Montana Valley. 5 years later, 1881, the exhibition hall in Helena bustled with activity as Montana's first territorial art showcase prepared to open. Paintings and sculptures from across the region filled the newly constructed building, representing both established artists from the East and emerging local talents. In the central gallery, a crowd gathered around a striking collection of artwork, unlike anything else in the exhibition. Detailed portraits of Indigenous elders alongside settler children. Landscapes capturing the dramatic Montana wilderness through a unique perspective that blended Western artistic techniques with native symbolism. Illustrated stories where words and images flowed together in harmony. At the center stood a canvas that commanded attention, a panoramic vision of two communities, Blackfoot and settler, gathered in a circle of learning. Indigenous elders demonstrated plant knowledge, while settler teachers shared books. Children from both worlds played together at the edges of the gathering. The painting vibrated with hope, without denying the complexities and pain of the past. A small brass plaque identified, "The artist, Willow Reed, Blackfoot, Montana." Near the exhibition entrance, a tall woman with amber eyes adjusted the display of illustrated books, the first dual-language readers created for both Indigenous and settler children, combining Blackfoot symbols and English text with vivid artwork. At 20, Willow Reed carried herself with quiet confidence, her scarred throat now partially concealed by a beaded choker that honored rather than hid her past. Rebecca Montgomery, now 37 and superintendent of the county school district, watched with undisguised pride as visitors examined the innovative educational materials they had developed together. "They're calling you the voice of the new Montana," she said, joining Willow by the book display. "Not bad for a girl who was once told she had nothing to contribute." Willow smiled, her expression eloquent as always. Though she had never regained her physical voice, she had developed a nuanced language of gesture, expression, and swift written communication that served her well in both worlds she inhabited. Familiar figure approached through the crowd, Grey Wolf, now bent with age, but his eyes still sharp with wisdom. Though Chief Running Elk had passed 2 winters ago, the old medicine man continued to serve as an essential bridge between the communities. "Little Willow," he greeted her in their native tongue, using the childhood name that had become a term of affection. The ancestors smile today. Your medicine grows strong." Willow embraced him gently, then introduced him to the territorial governor, who had just arrived to officially open the exhibition. The easy confidence with which she moved between these different spheres, Indigenous elder, political leader, art patrons, curious children, spoke volumes about her journey. The ceremony began with speeches celebrating Montana's cultural development. When the governor specifically praised the remarkable collaboration between Miss Montgomery and Miss Reed that has revolutionized education on the frontier, Rebecca squeezed Willow's hand in shared recognition of how far they had come. As the exhibition opened to general visitors, Willow circulated among the guests, communicating through a combination of gestures, facial expressions, and a small notebook where she jotted quick responses when needed. Many knew her well enough now to understand her unique language without written words. Near the end of the evening, as the crowds thinned, a group of unexpected visitors arrived. Morning Star, now married, and a mother herself, accompanied by several young Blackfoot women. Though her relationship with Willow remained complicated, time had softened the sharp edges of their past conflict. "The council sends congratulations," Morning Star said formally. "Your work honors our people while building new understanding. With the settlers," one of the young women stepped forward hesitantly, "I begin teaching at the exchange school next month," she said in careful English. "Your drawings showed me it was possible to walk in both worlds without losing myself." Willow's face brightened with genuine emotion. She wrote quickly in her notebook and showed it to the young woman. "The path is never easy, but worth every step. My door is always open to you." Later that night, as Rebecca and Willow returned to their lodgings, they reflected on the day's significance. "When you appeared at my cabin door 5 years ago," Rebecca said, "I never imagined we'd be here. You've accomplished more without words than most people do with endless speeches." Willow smiled and wrote in her journal, "We built something that didn't exist before, a bridge made of art and education instead of treaties and force." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "There's still so much work to do, so many minds still closed, so many wounds still fresh. But today I saw territorial officials having genuine conversations with Blackfoot elders. I saw children excited about dual-language books. Those seeds will grow." Through the open window came sounds of the growing frontier town, piano music from a nearby hotel, the rumble of wagons, distant train whistles announcing the coming railroad. Montana was changing rapidly, for better and worse. Willow added to her journal, "Grey Wolf says change is like river, cannot stop it, but can sometimes guide its course. What we do now shapes what flows next." The next morning they rose early for the journey home. Their lives had expanded beyond the cabin with the red door, though it remained their sanctuary. The small bridging school they had established on neutral ground between Riverstone and the Blackfoot territory now served children and adults from both communities. Their educational materials were being adopted across the territory. As they loaded their wagon for the return trip, the territorial newspaper caught Rebecca's eye. The headline announced, "Montana Art Exhibition Breaks Attendance Records. Native American artist featured prominently." She showed it to Willow with a smile. Not bad for a girl once rejected by both worlds. Willow took the paper, her expression thoughtful as she traced the words with her finger. After a moment, she wrote in her journal and showed it to Rebecca. "Not rejected, just waiting for the right soil to grow." As they journeyed home across the Montana landscape, both women contemplated the circular nature of Willow's story. The silent child, cast out and voiceless, had found her power in that very silence, creating bridges that allowed others to find their voices too. Grey Wolf had been right years ago. Willow had indeed returned to her people, but changed and bringing change with her. not through force or demand, but through the quiet power of art that spoke directly to the heart. The cabin with the red. Dutta came into view as they crested the final hill, the place where their journey together had begun. But now it stood at the center of a wider circle. The small bridging school nearby. Gardens where children learned both Indigenous and Western planting techniques. A community gathering space where elders from both cultures shared stories and wisdom. As the wagon rolled to a stop, several students ran to greet them, Indigenous and settler children together, holding illustrated books they had created in Willow's style. Rebecca looked at Willow, finding in her expression the same wonder she felt at what they had managed to build from such unlikely beginnings. "Home," Rebecca said simply. Willow nodded, her scarred throat and silent tongue no longer barriers, but catalysts that had helped create something new in the space between worlds. She reached for her journal one last time and wrote a single sentence. "Some bridges are built with no sound at all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us."